Right, let's get us together on Facebook. Let me start this. Gotta always have music to get going.
Yes,
Set the
I like that.
vibe.
Actually, it makes me more relaxed.
Yes.
It's one thing when I'm the one, I know it's my control issues. When I'm presenting and I'm the one doing it, I'm cool. But when
Right.
somebody else is in charge, it's like, oh God, it's my control issues. I know. Mhm.
All right. I will give you my heart. And I don't own this, so let me turn that off real quick as we are live on Facebook now. Let me pause that.
Let me turn my
And
phone down also.
all right, we are live. Hey, family. How y'all doing? Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday, and welcome to the Just Chamia Show live community check-in. Hey, I missed y'all. We here. Today is Sunday, March 7th, 2021. Oh my gosh, we are already at the end of the quarter. Crazy. But we made it, and I'm grateful, and I'll get to how I'm feeling in a moment. But before I do, you see that there's someone on screen with me, and I have been talking about and telling y'all that she's coming for some time. So let me tell you who we have today with us on the show, because I'm super juiced. Okay. I'm going to read her bio, then I'm going to bring it back. Okay. Dr. Cathia Walters-Knight is a Jamaican-born Black woman who migrated to the U.S. at the age of 16. For over 10 years, she has worked to refine both systems and solution-focused brief therapy approaches. At her practices, Walters Wellness Group, they work together with clients to achieve health and life goals, whether it be managing stress, coping with illness, or repairing a broken relationship. All of that. Her clients experience a safe and supportive environment where they can explore and work through emotional and interpersonal issues brought on by life transitions, including relationships, work, family, and or societal and cultural pressures. Y'all know we got a whole bunch of that as Black folks, all right? Her specializations include victims and survivors of abuse and violent crimes, attachment, as well as separation and divorce or reorganization, depression, anxiety, relationships, coping with identity and self-esteem. She works with adults, couples, and families in transition and or crisis. She offers a secure, judgment-free, and private environment that will help you regain your psychological health through a multifaceted approach to wellness. And we could say so much more, and we will as we get into it today. So y'all join me in welcoming Dr. Walters. Hey, girl.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me on. I've been looking forward to this, excited to see what the afternoon holds.
Yes. And I am real quick going to post your contact details into the chat for those of you on Facebook. So you can find Dr. Walters on Instagram at dr.cwalters. You can find her on Facebook at dr.waltersknight.side, and her website is www.drwaltersknight.com. So we'll say it a couple of times. Got to do that placement, how to find you. How are you today?
Great. It's such a beautiful day. I was so tempted to take this call outside because it's so nice out. But I'm like, let me stay inside nowadays with everyone working from home. The internet don't know how to handle this many people online. Everyone's at home. So I'm like, I better stay in. But I'm in a good space today. I'm glad it's Sunday. I'm glad it's Sunday afternoon and I'm winding down and, just excited again, to be here to, see how I can be a support, to whoever is on the call as best as I can. But overall, I'm great. I'm blessed.
Excellent.
Too blessed to be stressed.
Right. Well, I mean, I still have some stresses, even in my blessings, but I hear you. I hear you. And it is a beautiful day out. I'm looking out at blue sky. I have my window open, sunshine everywhere, but it's cold. So I'm like, don't let the sunshine fool you. It's cold outside. It's the wintertime. How I'm doing today, one, I'm good. Like, I'm looking forward to spring. I'm looking forward to spring. I'm really excited about that, but I'm also wishing for more rain because I need to take a couple of days off work that coincide with clouds and rain and chill. And so I want to do that. I am happy about some Black film, and the creatives have come through for me this weekend. So I did watch the Coming to America picture. I won't tell anything about the film because, in case people haven't watched it yet. But I will say, while it does not compare to the original, I enjoyed it. I was just happy to see everybody Black in it. I was like, oh, there go Wesley. Found Morgan Freeman. That's my girl. I was just so happy to see everybody. So I enjoyed it. And another movie that I watched this weekend that I enjoyed is The United States versus Billie Holiday on Hulu. Andra Day, she bodied that. The casting was amazing. I know her as a singer, never seen her as an actress, and everybody that was in there, it was fresh faces, and they did that. It was just well done. Round of applause.
Nice.
So I'm very happy about those movies. Other creators give me creative energy, and I love that. So I'm excited about that, and just looking forward to more love in my life, because who doesn't need that? So before we get started too, because folks have been reminding me to plug my stuff. So I'm going to do that and ask Dr. Walter to do the same. And then we'll get into some things from the social universe that I've seen on the gram. I want to remind you all that I am filming a documentary on our Black experience during COVID. So I would love to have a conversation with you and hear what's going on in your universe, what you're thinking about, what your questions are, all of these things about COVID. So if you're interested in having a conversation with me and participating in the documentary, please do email me at info@ChamiaLaRae.com. That is info@ChamiaLaRae.com. You can also DM me anywhere on social media at just Chamia. All right, so that's the documentary. Also, I was told to plug the book, Dear Love, a collection of love letters written to love by yours truly. And it's available everywhere: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Books, iTunes, or whatever, the Apple bookstore, everywhere, all over the world where books are sold. You can buy Dear Love, a collection of love letters written to love. And Dr. Walters, you are going to stay on for a hashtag Dear Love the movement, right? And read some love letters with us.
Yes. I don't know if it's mine. Let me check my internet because something's going on. You keep freezing. So I don't know if it's mine or if it's on your end. So let me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm listening though. I'm just going to go ahead and check.
All right. So while you do that, I'm going to start with some things that I've seen from around the gram that were of interest to me. And certainly Dr. Walters, just throughout everything that we're talking about, please give us your 2 cents. We love to hear what you're thinking about. For those of you on Facebook, just a reminder that if you're interested in coming on camera, you have questions for Dr. Walters Live, the link is in the description for Zoom. You can also type your questions into the chat and we can get them that way. All right, so let me pull up and share my screen with you all. And I'm gonna share some things that I've seen and found interesting from around the gram this week. This first one.
Joining today. I know it's super early, but
Posted
I just
by
wanted to share our results from our last.
This is when you don't think you're on
Share
camera.
our results from our last.
Cameras on Zoom.
Siobhan, is there a problem?
Recovery. The recovery, because this is what we do, right? Got to play that off. I thought that was hilarious. One of my sisters sent that to me. She was like, this is so you. And I'm like, well, my camera is normally just off. But yeah, there's that. There's lots of stuff. I don't know how many of y'all have continued to follow the hearings about the terrorist attack in January and all of the foolery there. Probably one of the more notable clips from that this past week.
In June of 2020, as violence was escalating during the summer protest, were you able to immediately receive approval from the Secretary of the Army and the Secretary of Defense to deploy National Guard to assist law enforcement at that time?
Senator Peters, I was. Yes, sir.
So that's for the Black
The
Lives
Secretary
Matter.
of the Army was
protest.
with me for most of that week. He came to the
Immediately.
Armory. I was in constant communication with him when we were not together.
So you were immediately able to receive approval in June of 20. From your testimony, I want to be clear. Were you able to immediately receive approval from the Secretary of the Army and the Secretary of Defense to deploy the National Guard on January 6th?
No, sir.
Right, and we know why. And we know why, because it was their function. They planned it, and they didn't want nobody coming in there and disturbing what they have put together. So yeah, that happened. A couple other things that we'll get into real quick. One, I thought this was amazing from sis, shout out to you, Queen Hippie Gypsy in Oakland. And she says, when someone tries to tell me that I need to be a certain way in order to be spiritual, no, I don't. I love that. And really what she's getting into, and especially for us as Black folks, this is important. Spirituality is more important than religion, right? Because a lot of the religion, especially the religion that we carry this day, was imposed on us and is written from a place of white supremacy and given to us that way. And you can absolutely have a direct spiritual connection with the Creator that is absent of all of their entities, or even as a part of that. So don't let nobody tell you what spirituality looked like for you. Tap in your own self. So I loved her for this. Do you? There's a lot of good stuff happening in the Bay. So this was posted by Richmond Post. Some people doing good things in Richmond, but really it's just some little sayings. This one, I'm not interested in competing. I hope we all win. Certainly for us Black folks, let's spread love, support one another. There's enough winning to be had for all of us to win, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. Again, if you spend your time and your mindset thinking about what other people are doing and measuring yourself up against the success of others, then you'll always find yourself lacking or questioning your position and things like that. It's not about comparing yourself to others, but comparing yourself against your own progress and your own goals and living every day and choosing joy. And then this one too, we who are many are never more powerful than when we are one. Again, most of our strength and our power comes from the collective of our Black tribe. So again, this is for us. Love these. This one I saw, I thought it was interesting, from the Every Black Project. And it says, being Black is not exhausting. And Dr. Walters, I want us to get into this as we get to talking into mental health as well, because a lot of us feel tired all the time. Oh, it's so hard being us. It's hard living in this Black skin, this Black body, and all the things we go through. But this one, posted by the Every Black Project, says, being Black is not exhausting. So they're getting into challenging the way that we're thinking, right? White supremacy is exhausting. White silence is exhausting. Systemic racism is exhausting. White feminism is exhausting. White-centered wellness is exhausting. Race-based violence is exhausting. Oppression is exhausting. Injustice is exhausting. So thinking about those things, right? And it's also being settled in yourself and being at peace at yourself. But if you're thinking about everything about you is exhausting, how can you have rest within who you are? There's all these things outside of us that we are subjected to that drain us. And so it's important to recognize that those things are outside of you, right? And not within you. All right. And to be refreshed within yourself. So that's one that I saw and I really got, I love Sis Teslin, Sis to Keep It Real. So the Washington Post, this is something that they had, there's several articles about the stimulus, for lack of a better term, that just passed, the stimulus package, 1.9 trillion that just passed. So Washington Post, this is just a snippet with a link to this article that they wrote, and the headline being, Biden stimulus showers money on Americans, sharply cutting poverty and defining move of presidency. Now, of course, just to keep it real, Teslin says $1,400 is showering money on Americans. Like, that's making it rain, really? And is sharply cutting poverty. At Washington Post, you should be ashamed of the grossly misleading headline. Absolutely. We talk about this all the time, how words are weaponized, right? And so we want to be careful that they don't think that y'all getting this $1,400 check is going to suddenly and magically deliver you from poverty and struggle. It ain't. It ain't. But the fact that this is like part of the spend that's coming, and even on Fox News, I don't know if you guys watch that, or some of the stories coming out about how too much stimulus is a bad thing and can cripple the economy and people's ability and desire to work. Whatevs. Those are just a few things. I could share more, of course. I do want to real quickly, if you guys hadn't heard about this, there's a video of this mom in Rochester, New York. Y'all PD just need to go, because they just keep offending and hurting our people. So this is a video that Sean King posted from the 22nd of February, and it's a mother and her 3-year-old, and she's tackled to the ground. As you can see, she's pepper sprayed by the police, all this. She was wrongly accused of stealing something from the store. She didn't steal anything. They found she didn't steal anything, but this woman out with her baby, and you see what they do to us. So there's a lot of things that happen all the time in videos that come, and I just want us to be aware, right, that this is how they treat us and treat our children. Look at this, slamming her to the ground like her baby's there. The other officer is trying to pull the baby away from the mom. They pepper sprayed the poor lady, and she didn't even do anything wrong. To them, what was wrong was she was Black, and being Black is suspicious, and they assume guilt, not innocence. And then this is what they do to us, and this is what they do to our children. This is part of the ongoing trauma, because I know we're going to talk about PTSD in a little bit, but you know, it's ongoing trauma. So these are some of the things that I just saw from around the gram since we were last together. Dr. Walters, before I get into the next gritty, any thoughts on just what I've shown so far?
No, I think, one of the things I've said, and I've been saying in the last year since we've been sheltered in place, is that a lot of what we're seeing is not new, which I know people are aware of. The difference is right now we have cell phones to our advantage, right? When Emmett Till was murdered, it took weeks for us to see, for the newspaper to come out and to hit certain corners, right? Now everything is in real time. Mm-hmm. And so I think, what we're seeing, especially since COVID, is a lot more anxiety in the Black community, a lot more depressive episodes. People are traumatized, right? And re-traumatized, So, I know you mentioned we're going to be talking about trauma in a little bit, but, we have to keep it in real, and that trauma has been a part of our existence from birth, and with the research now pre-birth, right? Mm-hmm. Because now we're looking at generational trauma, and a lot of the cutting edge research are basically saying that, or physiology, which I think we already knew, in utero can be changed, right? One of the reasons for the entire world, intimate partner abuse now involves, abuse. We can remove a child for domestic violence now, right? Whereas before it was neglect, sexual abuse to the child, physical abuse to the child. Now with the research, they're saying in utero, a child can be damaged. So think historically for the Black community, during the time of enslavement, oppression, colonialism, racism, segregation, we're talking about kids who in utero are exposed to these things, right? We're seeing this happen now. We're seeing this 3-year-old witnessing her mom being pepper sprayed, being thrown to the ground. The world is watching this. Kids who are not biologically related to this woman is seeing this and have moms and are traumatized, right? So imagine, someone who's pregnant, who's seeing this, right? And is experiencing this either directly or indirectly, what's happening to that person's physiology and what's happening to the unborn fetus in utero. Yeah. Right. And so we're seeing more and more of this, and so I know we're going to talk a little bit more, but it's disheartening. It's anger provoking. Yeah. It's all those things. It hits us. It doesn't matter who you are, parent or not, and what saddens me is when I see, 5-year-old cringe or something comes over the news, which is why I don't do the news, something comes over and a 5-year-old immediately, based on how the story is told, is able to say, oh, that person must be white, right? Because there's no visual image, right? Yeah. So they're like, right? But if, as long as it's, you know, Black person, there goes that image, right? Or a brown person, there goes that image, right?
Yeah.
So, we'll talk about trauma. It's not as, there's an intersect, right, between racism and classism and sexism. And if you're Black, guess what? You're in all of that.
Right.
Right.
Dr. Walters, I want to break something down. As we go through the topics today, there's some words that we're going to be using. And I want to make sure that everyone understands and we speak in plain, speak to everybody. So a couple of things, if you could just ground us in some simple definitions for shared understanding today, right? And I know like some of these are complex terms that can be bigger, but for shared understanding today, what is trauma? What does that mean? What is anxiety? What does that mean? And maybe depression. We'll start with just those three. What is trauma? What is anxiety? What is depression? Because certainly all of the topics that we're talking, there's some big buckets of categories that I talk about. Like for example, COVID. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Racism in America, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. And any of those can lead to my understanding of trauma, anxiety, depression, and more. So as we're talking about mental health and wellness, I think within our community, it starts with having an understanding of what that is, what that means. And then we can see how it applies to our life.
Okay. Well, I can, do you want me to talk about that now or want to wait until later?
No, let's get in. Let's get
in. So I think it's important to talk about mental health. Let's just talk about it in a general way, right? So when we talk about mental health, we're talking about the way a person thinks. Right? The way they feel, how they interact, how we behave, right? How we show up, right? How do we adjust to life challenges, right? Whether it's to ourselves, right? Because it could be about ourselves, it could be about others, it could be the community, basically the world. So that's mental health. When we talk about that, it's how do we show up individually? How do we show up collectively, right? So if we were to look at it in terms of, a mentally healthy person, right, versus somebody who's mentally ill, there's not a big division between those two, right? But when we talk about someone who's quote unquote mentally healthy, we're talking about someone we define as, who's well adjusted, right? So basically worry-free doesn't mean you don't have worries, right? But what we see is there's more resiliency here, right? And so they're able to deal more effectively with challenges, right? One of the things I tell people is said, we don't overcome anything. There's no such thing as you overcome, right? You learn how to manage. You learn how to manage life challenges because every single day there is a challenge. It could be a small one, it could be a big one. Right. And so even when we talk about trauma, we talk about small T traumas and big T traumas. Right. Yeah. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But so in essence, for someone who's mentally healthy, right, we're talking about people who are able to rise to the occasion. They have lapses, right? They deal with it and they keep going. Right. And mentally ill, quote unquote, or as more often you'll hear people say someone who's emotionally disturbed, right, are folks that you see who are more, frequently are more anxiety laden. They're worried about life. They tend to sometimes exaggerate certain things, not necessarily consciously, right? Because a lot of it, we live mainly in our unconscious. So a lot of decisions we make, our brain is so programmed. Right? For example, for someone who's anxious, we have to remind ourselves that anxiety is a protector. Right. So, and I'll explain more about that.
I'm feeling the triangle coming, the threat regulation.
Yep.
She has me trained. I can't think of like trauma and threat regulation and all this without doing the symbol.
Exactly. Right. So for someone who's mentally ill, we're talking about an exaggeration in our thoughts, right? An exaggeration in how we feel. So instead of being irritable, I may be rageful or angry, again, or I may go straight down into depression. Again, it doesn't mean that, these things aren't valid, right? The difference is how I choose to show up, right? How I choose to allow people, places, and things to rent space up here, right? So I can continue to rent space, or I can give you a 3-day notice and start the eviction process, and evict your behind out of my head, right? So that's so there's not that big of a gap between someone who would define as mentally healthy or mentally ill, right? It's again about how I choose, to establish good habits.
With the exception of, so then what about those who have, I don't know, for lack of a better term, more severe diagnoses of things like psychosis?
Right. So that's the thing to understand. So that's just the distinction. When I'm talking about mental health, that's just the distinction. Mm-hmm. When we go further, right, there's two broad categories, right? I'm sure you've heard, or most people have heard of SMI, severe mentally ill, which is what you're referring to, right? And then we have the AMIs that's any mental illness. So that's anxiety, that's depression. There's a broad spectrum that goes from 0 to severe. So any mental illness is the larger, think of it as the umbrella, right? It goes from 0 to 100, with 100 being the ones who are more severe, right? So one of the things I often tell people, I said, life is like, and mental health is no different. It's like the Kinsey scale, right? Everything is on a scale, right? Our goal is to try to stay as centered as we can. Mm-hmm. There's a problem. Life happens, which is why I say we manage, we don't overcome. Life happens. Who would have thought a year ago, today's what, the 7th? So 10 days from today, we will have been locked down for 365 days, right?
Some of us longer than that already. It's already been
some of that, right? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, in response to your question, we're talking about where I tilt on the scale, right? So for severe mental health issues, we're talking about, stuff like schizophrenia, the psychosis, right? So we tilt, right? And we can tilt in either direction, right? Yeah. So that's more severe. In terms of population, there's about 13, I think it's like the last time we look at this in 2019, I think there's like 13 million folks ages 18 or older who are diagnosed with SMI, right? Of that group, of course, Black folks is about I think it was like 8%, 8.6% or something like that, right? Of that 13 million, right? So,
I'm surprised that it's not a higher trend, or is
well, if you think about it though, if it's 13 million folks, right? Black folks were about, what will be like 37? I don't want to lie. I can look it up in a minute, but I think of the 20 million folks in the US, I think 37 million folks identify as Blacks, right? And so from that percentage, if we're having 13 million adults 18 and older, right, who are diagnosed with severe mental illness, that's about 5.2% of the entire US population. And of that 5.2%, 4% of that is Black. So that's a large chunk. That's a large chunk. In terms of treatment, only about, 8.6% gets treatment. And of that, only about, I think it's like less than a half of Black folks that gets treatment, right?
Wow, and that's one of the biggest questions, like as people were sending in questions in advance, was around, resources that are available and all of that. And when we hear numbers like that says, such low numbers are getting treatment, I wonder how much of that is because of, choice, right? So self-choice, like I don't want it, or, choosing not to, versus accessibility and availability of programming.
I think resources. I think it's both. I think, let's be honest, going back to something I said earlier, we cannot talk about race without looking at the intersect. We cannot talk about race without looking at history and systems and how the systems were put in place. And because of those systems that were put in place, why should I trust you? Right? Let's look at how Black folks have been used over the years. We've been used as guinea pigs. Everyone's familiar by now with the Tuskegee syphilis, project. Most people are familiar with the AIDS epidemic and the Black babies that they were inoculated in New York. So I mean, so it comes back to, why would I choose to go see someone even if I'm ill? Right? What are you going to do with that information? Right? You also have to remind ourselves again, historically, things were used against Black community, hence years ago we had don't air your dirty laundry, right? We all grew up hearing that you do not air your dirty laundry because the minute you say something, it's going to be used against people that look like me. So not only do I have a mistrust of the system, right? But when I do try to trust you, you use it against me, right? So why would I want to? So choice-wise, no, I'm not going to go. I'd rather suffer in silence, right? Right. And so in terms of accessibility, we're talking about financial accessibility. We're also talking about how many clinicians out there that looks like you, right? Or at least is culturally adept to be able to work with you, right? To understand where you're coming from, to get you, right? So yeah, I don't want to go is, one of the things. And then of course the stigmas, because, we all well, I don't know the audience that's on here, but most folks have seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Why would I want to go talk to somebody if that's what's going to happen? If you can do that to some white folks, what you going to do to me, Black? Right. So I think, again, when we talk about these diagnoses and we talk about the numbers, I think some of that really is about access. Some of it is we're not going. Right? Because of fear, right? Not because we wouldn't want to get the services, but what are you going to do with that information? You were talking about the mistrust. We're talking about the COVID and the vaccines, people are scared, right? And
they have reason to be. Hold on, let me get on because I got to share because I have a ton of questions for you. Have a question or two coming in on the chat and then some pre-submitted too. But I do want to share updates on COVID and I want to talk about COVID and mental health specifically for us with Black folks. So real quick, I want to just share the updated numbers on where we are as of today. Then a couple stories. Let's talk about it. So case numbers as of today. Last time we were together, everyone, in the United States, we were at 28.6 million cases of COVID. Today, we're at 28.9. So that's not a lot of cases. I think we're still seeing around 200,000 a week or so, and still 2,000 deaths a day. So that's that. Again, I don't believe it. I still think that we're in the eye of the storm with these variants we can't see. Find the links. Globally, last time we were together, we were at 113.9 million. As of today, we're at 116,710,429 cases globally. Again, you can see the map at johnhopkinsuniversity.edu. For the Black population, remember, you can check out covidtracking.com/race. I will post that again into the chat for those of you on Facebook. I have some questions and concerns because a lot of stuff has happened this week and things will get swept under the rug. I want to have 3 all no articles to share now. I was reading this, I was like, oh no! The first one I'm pasting into the chat and I'm going to share my screen with y'all because it's a lot of stuff to read through. I read it, I make my annotations and share with you, but I give you the information because I want you to know it for yourself, draw your own conclusions, and then make sure that you live accordingly, that you are safe. So the first one I'm going to read, you may have heard about this in the news or from a friend, but yeah, this happened. Oh no. Texas, Mississippi to lift mask mandates, let all businesses reopen at full capacity. What the holy hell? Y'all tripping. All right, so let me read a little bit of the article. So this is a couple of days ago. Texas and Mississippi on Tuesday issued separate executive orders to lift their state's mask mandates and give all businesses the green light to reopen at full capacity, casting off restrictions meant to curb the COVID-19 pandemic. Quote, we must now do more to restore livelihoods and normalcy for Texans by opening Texas 100%, said Governor Greg Abbott. He went on to say, but it is clear from the recoveries, vaccinations, reduced hospitalizations, and safe practices that Texans are using the state mandates that are no longer needed. Crazy. The governor of Mississippi said, starting tomorrow, we are lifting all of our county state mandates and businesses will be able to operate at full capacity without any state-imposed rules. That's Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi. Other states, including Montana, Iowa, have also lifted their mask mandates. And then in Massachusetts, their Governor Charlie Baker announced on Monday that restaurants in the state will no longer have to adhere to capacity limits. So y'all could come indoors, breathe on each other, fully packed, all of that. However, Rochelle Walensky, the director of the CDC, said on Monday that she was deeply concerned that the recent decline in cases has seemed to stall as daily cases are still around 70,000 mark. Quote, 70,000 cases a day seemed good compared to where we were just a few months ago, she said at a news briefing, but we cannot be resigned to 70,000 cases a day or 2,000 daily deaths. Please hear me clearly. At this level of cases with variants spreading, we stand to completely lose the hard-earned ground we have gained, she continued. These variants are a very real threat to our people and our progress. Now is not the time to relax the critical safeguards that we know can stop the spread of COVID-19 in our community. That's one. The second one is an all nah for me, and I will share this link in the chat for y'all on Facebook just a moment. The headline here from The Guardian, Catholics in New Orleans and St. Louis told to avoid Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This came out from their archdiocese in those places. The archdiocese in New Orleans, as well as Roman Catholic leaders in St. Louis, Missouri, and this is conflicting from what the Vatican is saying, but they've told their local Catholics to avoid the Johnson & Johnson single-shot COVID-19 vaccine because its early development used morally compromised cell lines created from 2 abortions. So that's what the vaccine was made from. Cells derived from an elective abortion in the Netherlands in the 1970s are commonly used in medical research. Last October, it was reported that Regeneron's drug that Trump got was made from that. The cell lines derived from the aborted tissue were used in the development of polio, chickenpox, hepatitis A, and shingles vaccines. Johnson & Johnson's vaccine subsidiary Janssen, which developed this COVID vaccine that they given folks, is a proprietary cell line derived from aborted tissue in 1985. Did you know that this is what they put in your bodies? Black folks, hey, how you feel about it? Just want y'all to know that you need to know what's being given. So there were the RNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna. Now you have this J&J vaccine derived from the tissues from aborted fetuses. All right, and then my last all hail to the gnaw, and I will share this as well. I had posted this on my social media earlier in the week when it happened, because I was like, hey, hey y'all, holla, we need to know about this. Thousands at Oakland Coliseum received the wrong vaccine dosage, medical staff said. So one EMT estimated 43,000 people had been given shots by then. So by Monday at 2 o'clock, thousands of people who had visited the mass vaccination site at the Oakland Coliseum received the wrong vaccine dosage this week, raising questions about the effectiveness of the medication, according to 2 medical workers who contacted. They were whistleblowers, essentially. Then, you know, the response to it was crazy. Like this one from Dr. John Schwartzberg from the UC Berkeley Public Health Infectious Disease and Vaccinology Department. Quote, it's very likely that these people have a decent immunity already, and I wouldn't want them all to freak out. Now they just have to figure out what's the best thing to do in a bad situation. They didn't even contact these people, these thousands of patients. They didn't even contact and tell them. Some responses. So this one, for example, from Jorge Munoz, 44, who's a legal conservator for his brother who had cerebral palsy, said the president didn't have these problems, talking about former President Donald Trump. He received excellent medical care, but as regular people do. And then just the back and forth. I'll post this in the chat. It's on my social media as well. But you know how they were talking about, oh, well, when they come to get their second shot, maybe we just give them a little bit extra, or maybe they'll need a booster. And then you have some other scientists that are saying in this article that, but there's no data to support that. We can't just do these things. There's no data to support these things that you're saying, right? So did you know, people, these are just some things that are going on with COVID. I keep talking about outstanding questions that I have about the vaccines. That was all hell no, all hail to the no. A few things. And then The last piece on COVID was an article that I read. I'm going to put all these links into the chat, but I want to, spend most of our time talking and engaging with Dr. Walters today. Another article stating how in the UK, they are fast tracking the review of the modified vaccines. So they are not required to do extensive clinical trials. They are not required to test these tweets on thousands of people in clinical trials. They can do it in a short amount of time with just a few hundred people and get approval. You guys need to know this stuff so that you can make informed decisions. I'll start pasting these things into the chat. McGill says, yes, if they open up, it's up to the people to take care of themselves. We all know that the pandemic is going on. That's true, Miguel. That's true. We all know that the pandemic is going on, but what we're seeing is that when people go out, they have to ask. They sit in a restaurant, they're drinking whatever. They're not thinking about mask and not spraying it as they say it. I saw a video today of people in Bath and Body Works crowded and acting a fool because workers wanted somebody to wear a mask. This lady didn't, and then there was a fight. So, no, we can't just bank on people knowing that it's a pandemic and doing the right thing because they're not. But things are opening up. And this is, I know, one of the things that I'm hearing, a lot of Black people are feeling conflicted. Some are already having anxiety and stress about things going up and is it safe and being around people and that re-entry anxiety. And then other folks are just tired of being on lockdown and feel like their lives have been just restricted in an unfair way. Dr. Walters, what are your thoughts first on just the news that I've shared? And then from a wellness standpoint, what are your thoughts and your recommendations for people who maybe have some angst going out into a reopened world? I'll give y'all my hot take real quick, which is this: stay vigilant, stay healthy, and keep your distance. It's not the time to just be out there all willy-nilly. Again, I still think we're in the eye of the storm. These variants are out here. Everywhere else in the world, the variants have shown up. They've spread a lot faster and to more people than the original version of COVID. So the fact that all the variants are here and we're not seeing the spikes is just because we're not, our tests are yielding false negatives and we're not sequencing. We're sequencing less than 1% of tests for variants in this country. So it's not that they came here to America and we're just so blood rich that they can't live in us. No, it's not that. They're here. So stay put. That's my thought. Okay, Dr. Walters, what's your thoughts? And I'm gonna drop these links in the chat.
Well, I think this whole conversation around COVID, it's a touchy topic, right? Because we have to be able to see things from both perspectives, right? That's how we survive in the world. We call it the dialectic. It doesn't have to be either or. There can be an and, right? It's walking that middle path. On a personal level, do I think opening up any place right now fully is the best thing? Going against CDC's guideline? No.
Mm-hmm.
Can I understand why some states are doing it? Yes. Do I necessarily agree with it? No.
They're doing it for the money.
So and that's the thing, right? Is when we listen, talk about relationship and dynamics and business and all of this, we need to listen with understanding. Understanding doesn't mean I agree, right? Understanding doesn't mean we agree, doesn't mean we like it. It means that, okay, right? And so that's where individual accountability also comes in, right? I may live in Texas, you can say it's open, but you know what? I don't have to engage in that. That's a choice I get to make because that's what works for me. Yeah. If you, Miss Chamia, want to go out there and flaunt and do whatever, have at it, enjoy, right? But I can make a choice, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing we all have to remind ourselves, regardless if it's COVID, regardless if it's, life, right? We all have choices, right? All choice comes with a consequence though, yeah. Right? So doing nothing is a choice in certain situations. Doing something is a choice. Mm-hmm. But regardless of the choice we make comes with a consequence. And so while I do not, me on a personal level, do not agree and support the reopening, financially, whatever their reasoning is behind all of this, and we can just sit here and speculate, right? That's on them. But each person gets to make a decision. If I want to go sit in a restaurant with people sitting next to me who are not wearing masks, or coughing, or I can still do what I do, cook and enjoy my food even better, cheaper, healthier, or order out, right? So that's kind of my take on that. In terms of the mental health piece, I hear that piece also. I hear people are like, I can't do this anymore. Cabin fever is real. I need to see a different wall. I just, so from a mental health perspective, I get it. People are, we're used to going, especially here in the US, we have so much freedom, of course, with limits, we know that, right? But at the end of the day, we're used to going and doing all of that, right? And so to be told, stay in, if you go out, wear a mask, don't do this, don't do that. After a while, humans are going to react. People are going to react, so yes, you're going to see fights, So the other thing, like I was saying earlier, is that everything is on a spectrum, right? So even the calmest person, it's like a caged bird, right? Right. So one of two things are going to happen. I'm either going to blow up, right? Or I'm going to go inwards. And this is where, if we're going to bring this into a mental health perspective, I'm going to develop so many phobias that when this is over, you're never, ever going to see me again. Right? Because I learned that I can order Instacart. I learned that I don't have to go and do anything. I can do everything on Zoom. Right.
Well, that, and also how we're thinking about other people. We think about other people as danger. If you start
exactly, right? And that's a part of anxiety, right? So when we think about anxiety, we're talking about these feelings, these prolonged feelings, these fear, right? So there's fear, right? Which is an emotional response and reactivity, right? And then there's anxiety, which is what you're talking about, which is oh my God, vigilance. Now I can't trust people, right? I can't do this, I can't do that because the world's, the fear is that autonomic response that we have, right? So let me backpedal a little. I started saying this earlier, that there's nothing wrong with anxiety. It's our natural protector, right? We were born with instincts. If you want to think of it, going back to the caveman days, they run out with their club, they club you, right? And then they worry about it. So that's kind of anxiety, because our brain is wired to protect us, right? So even with COVID, right? So people are starting to develop, people are developing anxiety, right? Some people go inward, which is more depressive, right? But when we talk about anxiety, we're talking about some fears that are real, right? When we talk about clinical anxiety, that becomes a problem, right? So there's a difference with protective and fear-based, right? Because it's like, there's a lion out there, so let me respond, let me react, right? Let me do what can I do to escape in this moment? It is happening now. And that's why we have those fear-based reactions, or heart start to race, blood start to pump, if you're familiar with the ANS system, the autonomic nervous system, or eyesight changes, right? Blood is deflected to our arms and our legs for the fight, flight, I run or I fight, right? So that's what's happening when we're in a fear state. It's that surge that we get. When we're in an anxious state, and when we have like a clinical anxiety, we're talking about, more persistent. So there's more of a, I'm constantly doing this. So even though I know the lion is gone, and I watch them take the lion away, tomorrow when I come back, next week when I come back, I'm still going to be doing this, right? Because I'm still going to think the lion is there, right?
We need to spend a lot more time. I mean, we can't today, but we can continue to have the conversation around anxiety. I think is one of those terms that's being used so widely by so many people. I even think about the younger generation, younger than me, because I'm on auntie status now, y'all know that. But the younger generations, you hear so much talk about anxiety, and then the drugs or medication that's prescribed. And I'm wondering how much of that is like this real clinical anxiety versus more socially cool anxiety. Because that's happening too. And then because you don't want to dilute a real condition that people actually
what
have.
people have to keep in mind. Sorry, I think you froze and I kept talking. Go ahead. What did you say?
Yeah, I was just saying we don't want to, make light of a real clinical condition that people have and need to be treated for, but it's one of those terms that's being thrown out so much that I don't think people really know what anxiety is and what it means. I mean, like I'm hearing like 5-year-olds talking about their anxiety and they have to manage it and have, toys to fidget and do stuff because they're anxious all the time. I'm just wondering how much of that is clinical versus us making it a trend.
Right. So, I always tell people, I said around each century or every few years, there's a new buzzword, right? About 5 years ago, everybody was bipolar, right? I got so sick of people talking about, oh, she's bipolar, I'm bipolar. I'm like, no, you're not. That's not something you want to claim. I think right now anxiety is the new buzzword, right? So we went through bipolar, we went through depression, we went through PTSD. That doesn't mean that it's not happening. And I think the world right now, because of the global trauma, right, which is what PTSD is, right? Post-traumatic stress, right? Is that because this world has suffered a global trauma in terms of the social unrest, which coincided with the COVID thing, I think everyone right now has either small t trauma, definitely anxiety, right? Definitely fear. Feeling afraid is a part of life, right? And I think that's what you're getting to, Chamia, is that feeling afraid is a part of life, right? The difference is, how I mentioned the scale, right? Is where do I tilt? Right? How far do I tilt? Because fear, it shows up in response to anything that's an anticipated danger. As Black folks, stepping out your door is dangerous, right? Being inside is dangerous, for Christ's sake. Even if you're in bed, it's dangerous, right? So the thing is that if I consistently am feeling afraid, right? So now we're talking about fear, right? I'm going to start developing a certain set of behaviors, right, in response to life, right? And that's where the problem comes in. If I start to create a narrative, and the way I work with folks, I said, it's all a narrative that you create, right? And so let me go to my little triangle brain here. This is what she's been waiting for. So we have 3 regulation system, right? Right? We have our threat regulation system, which is what we're talking about right now. We have our soothing regulation system and what I call the planning system, right? So this threat regulation system is the one that's our most primitive. This is our protector, right? That's the one, if it smells danger, if it sees danger, if it hears danger, it's going to take off.
Let me ask you, is it the threat regulation system that has Black women stepping into that superwoman mode? Where
it's the threat regulations, everyone who's experienced any type of trauma, and I'm using that loosely, right? Big T, small t, doesn't matter. As a Black woman, your existence, right, is trauma. 2 things, you're a woman and you're Black, right? And then if we want to add SES to that, right? So the threat regulation system doubles as our protector. So yes, right? That's that part of the brain that says, you know what, this doesn't feel good, so I should do this. Right? And here's the thing though, just because my brain tells me I should do something doesn't necessarily mean that that's the healthy route to take, right? Going back to what I said earlier, it does not distinguish between real or imagined fear. All it knows is that because the brain works based on habits, as far as it's concerned, if I deviate just this much or something comes in just this much, that's a change.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is not able to distinguish if it's a good change or if it's a bad change. It just knows it's different and it's going to do its job. It's going to protect you. The way it protects you may be anxious behaviors, depressive
or dismissive completely
behaviors, so I'm going to lock myself down. I'm going to fight. I'm going to go off, right? It's a defense, right? The difference is it one, and this is what we have to ask ourselves. It goes back to, is this response in line with what's really happening, right? And so that's where I have to check in with myself, right? Because again, I have to feed this belief. I mentioned earlier that it's a narrative that I created. So if my narrative says I'm in danger, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to look for everything to feed that narrative.
So
right?
let's talk about, like, on that theme of danger and looking for danger, and you know, your threat regulation system and trauma. So we talked about, or you mentioned that you know, to live in this country as a Black woman is traumatic, right? We're born into this system. We talked about in utero transference of trauma. There's some studies that I've seen. There's a sister that talked about PTSD, post-traumatic slavery syndrome. Yeah, you know, all of that, and how that can be passed down for multiple generations, as many as 5 generations. So then that would mean, like, someone like me is living with the trauma of that. Absolutely. But if we think about the traumas that we live with as Black people in this country, including, you know, as Black women, there's the historical traumas that we face. There are the direct/indirect traumas that we experience. For example, COVID. Like, I don't have COVID, but I'm living through COVID, and it's a traumatic experience, collective traumatic experience. There are things like we saw the video at the top of the show of the sister in Rochester, New York, getting beat down by the police in front of her with her baby. As a mother, that's traumatic for me. As a Black woman, that is traumatic for me. There's the racism that we face on our jobs, right? On a day-to-day basis. So when I'm thinking about getting to the post-traumatic, I'm seeing a lot of regular, everyday occurring trauma that happens to us. And this is outside of other specific things that may have happened to a person, like abuse or, you know, things like that. So what do you recommend that we do first to recognize trauma in our lives, to acknowledge it, and then to begin to process it? Because I don't know if you can heal and get over it, but I don't know how can you manage that? And I feel like with us as Black folks, certainly we have the traumas of our past, but our presence and our lives are just very traumatic, even for our children and the things that they have to go through, right? And I almost feel like there's a conditioning that this country imposes on us to either ignore or to put away our trauma and to soldier on with a happy face and dancing jazz fingers, you know, be this all the time, you know. So how do we deal with that? Because so we can be healthy.
So a couple things. One is there's trauma and there's what we call, there's PTSD and what we call complex PTSD, right? So complex PTSD is what you just described, you know, ongoing trauma, whether it started in utero or not, you know, generational trauma, right? So being exposed from a child, you know, whether directly or indirectly, because remember the thing about PTSD is that it doesn't have to be direct at me, right? I can witness it. Right. That's why when we had those tsunamis back in the 1990, whenever that was, there were so many people who were traumatized just watching it. Right. So as a Black person growing up, as a Black woman growing up and being exposed to all these things directly or indirectly, and let's be also fair too, you know, as a Black woman in a Black community, right, we're also forced or sometimes choose to show up as the matriarch because, you know, historically that's what we do, right? We protect everybody. We protect the kids, the husband, the sons, the fathers, the neighbors, right? That was kind of assigned to us historically, right? And so we have the strong Black woman, you know, phenomena, right? Which means we take care of everybody to our own, you know, even if we're falling apart. So that's that's trauma also within itself. So we not only is there the external trauma from society at large, but there's the internal trauma within our cultures also, right? And further down, you know, more ethno in or family of origin, depends on your birth order, what your expectations are. So we're talking about multiple levels, right? That's happening. So what do? Right? Different ways to approach it. Yes, the first thing is we have to acknowledge that and redefine what it means to be a strong Black woman.
Mhm.
You know, I do a Black woman support group, and that's the first day that we meet. I talk about, we will redefine that, right? A strong Black woman is not the person who's her face caring for everybody, right? A strong Black woman is the woman who has boundaries.
And
right? It's the woman.
I want to do a plug just real quick for Dr. Walters' Black Women Support Group. I am not a group anything person. It just doesn't work for me. But she was like, she drugged me to the Black Women Support Group. I went kicking and screaming, and oh my God, I have been so fed. I'm still being fed from it, you know, through the connections and the things that the sisters have shared with me and all of that. I recommend it, sisters. So you could go to her website. There's information. The website is in the chat. And Black Women Support Group coming up again is available, Dr. Walters?
Yes. Oh, you froze for a minute. There you go.
Okay.
All right. So yeah. So one of the things, you know, thank you, Chamia, for that plug. One of the first thing we debunk is that, you know, a strong Black woman is someone who's able to have those boundaries and to be able to say no, and not just say no, but to say no without guilt and shame, right? Because when we talk about complex PTSD, the core of complex PTSD is guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Right. So for straight PTSD, it's not so much the guilt and shame. Straight PTSD is more fear-based, right? It's about, oh my God, the line is out there, or oh my God, this could happen. Complex PTSD, it goes deeper, because now if I do or if I don't do, I have a lot of guilt and shame around doing or not doing, or how I'm choosing to show up, right? And so to be able to understand that it is okay for me to say no, right? And that self-care, this is the other thing I put in, self-care never equals selfishness, because that's one of the first things we learn, is that you are being selfish. You can do this for this person, right? Even though you're tired. I don't understand why you can't just spend 5 minutes and do that.
Right.
No, I'm tired, right? Maybe I can do that for you tomorrow, but I will not, and I cannot do that now. So in terms of how we manage and care for that, that's one of the first things we have to learn to do, is love of self, right? It's, how important am I?
First, love yourself. I'm wearing the fly shirt today.
You, right? If you don't love you, you know, and if you don't love you, how can you then expect someone to love you? If
Right.
you don't have boundaries, how can you expect someone to understand what that is? So when you set boundaries, you got to remind yourself the boundaries is not just for you, it's for everyone else to know how to show up in your life, what they can and cannot do, what they can get away with and what they cannot get away with.
And we spend a whole lot of time too talking on boundaries, and we need to for our community. Dr. Walters, I'm already going to do an ask and ask you to come back another time. Spend some more time with us. I want to get to the people's questions, because I'm getting texts and messages and people have questions for you. So I'm going to ask that we do a rapid fire. I'll read the question. We could give us as succinct a response as possible, because we've already talked for an hour and it's flown by. And I want to leave some time for us to get to Dear Love, certainly.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So first question that just came in is, what's the best way to check in with kids regarding COVID-19? How can we talk to them about their emotions?
First, validate. Always validate. Feelings are always valid. Let them know their feeling is valid. Their fear is valid. You know, it's okay. It's how we allow to control us. So the same way you would talk to yourself and or your friend and say, you know what, babe, I understand you're scared. It is a scary time, right? And we're all doing the best we can to survive this. Here's what we as a family can do, right? How can I support you? What do you need from mommy right now or daddy right now? How can daddy or mommy help you to understand and to feel safe within our context? That's it. I'm trying to make them as succinct as I can.
Thank you. Do you know of any housing resources that you can share for those with mental illnesses, particularly for Black men?
So I'm actually, you know, the housing resources, that's always a very hard one, because the housing resources I know of, honestly, are the ones that are usually more mandated, right? So, but there are different types. There's board and care, right? There's day program, there's subsidized housing, there are all these different types. And so the only thing I can say honestly here is I can check with my resources, but it has to be, the question has to be a little bit more defined in terms of what you're looking for.
Okay.
Oftentimes what happens, just quickly with Black folks, again, because we don't utilize the mental health as frequently as folks, then you get hospitalized in, these facilities,
Mhm.
right? So you get like a 14 days to a 30-day facility. And those are usually connected to, if you're seeing a clinician, he or she, she or he's able to then connect you with those. So it also based on where you live. So I really can't answer that right now.
Yeah, but that's good.
Later on, try to look in Alameda County, and you can share that with your audience. But yeah, I honestly can't answer that right now.
Yeah, thank you. And any resources that you share, I'll post them up later.
Yes.
As well. So the thing is there's things that vary by county or by your locality, and you
Yeah.
Another question: can you be depressed and not have depression?
Absolutely. Depression is a state, right? It's, we can have the blues, which we all have. We've all had the blues. I wake up feeling crappy, don't want to deal, just want to lay in bed, want to have a mental health day.
Mhm.
When we talk about clinical depression, we're talking about a set of symptoms that last for a period of time, for a prolonged. We usually look at it has to be at least 2 weeks, and we're looking at 5 of 9 symptoms that has to be present for
Mhm.
someone to be clinically depressed. It also has, it's a more full body experience, right? So it affects the way I think, it affects the way I feel, and it affects what I do, right? Whereas if I have the blues, it's just, I don't want to deal with the world today,
Mhm.
right? So I still have pleasure in doing things, still want to talk to my friends, I still want to engage. I just don't want to right now. Right. Whereas depression, that I don't want to right now. We're now into week, day 5, day 6, day 7. And so it leads oftentimes to, a decrease in our ADLs or activities of daily living.
Mhm.
So I'm not going outside. I'm not connecting with friends. I'm not bathing. I'm not eating. My sleep is interrupted. I'm not, I'm sleeping way too much. My appetite is gone, or I'm an emotional eater. So I'm eating a whole lot, so it comes with physical changes,
Mhm.
right? And behavioral changes. And I also see the world as not a good place right now. It's what we call the depressive triad. It's how I see myself. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
How I see others are doing better. Life is great for them. The
Mhm.
world, and also I see the world as catastrophic. It's destructive, and again, we're distinguishing that between, what's real versus just how I'm seeing it. Again, it all goes through that lens and that narrative I talked about when I was saying about anxiety, because they share that similar trait. We create a narrative of how I see myself or the world.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, one more question, then we're going to pivot into self-care, and then Dear Love the Movement. So this one, it was a little bit more. So my mom passed 2 years ago, and I still miss her dearly. I feel like my friends and family are growing impatient with me as they feel I should be over my grief by now. Am I still grieving, or is this depression?
Okay, so here's well, let me say this. Grief is an emotional journey, all right? It takes upwards of 3 years, sometimes 5 years to really, truly heal from grieving, right? We live in a culture that says you get 3 days, suck it up, get over it.
Yeah.
If the person's 50 miles away or more miles away, you get 5 days because we'll give you 2 days to travel. And so we've all internalized this thing where we think after, a few days, I should get over it. No, absolutely. That's not how it works. It's a journey. And so you'll have days that you're doing great. Then you have days that you spike and you're doing days that you go down here, right? Grief goes through stages. Right? You have to make it through all those stages. And unfortunately, it's not a stepwise progression. So you can get, you're going to go through your denial, your anger, your bargaining, your depression, and you can go right back to anger, right? Before we get to acceptance. The 6th stage of grief is what we call, what we try to get people to, and it's creating meaning. right? And so what that looks like, and this is how you know, is that now you can remember the person and smile, and you can have fun conversation. That is also the hallmark to distinguish between depression and bereavement or grieving, right? For someone who's grieving, they can still think of the person and smile, even though they're hurting, right? If I'm depressed, it doesn't matter what you say about my mom. I can't think of any fun things. I can't think of anything wonderful, about that person. You can remind me and I'm still like this, right? And I'm not talking about, just because I'm sad. I'm talking about this. Again, I mentioned that depression is a holistic thing, right? So can grief transition into depression? Absolutely. Right. So it still comes back to everything we do comes back to self-care. What am I doing to take care of myself? The base model. What am I doing to take care of my body? So that's physical. Am I exercising? Am I drinking enough water? Am I sleeping? Am I, doing all that? Am I engaged in activities, directed activities? Am I working? If I'm in school, am I going to school? Am I doing my chores? C is, am I connecting with folks? Am I reaching out to my friends, family? Am I doing those social things that I used to? And E is for enjoyment. Am I enjoying life? So am I living or am I existing? Right? Things, regardless if it's anxiety, depression, all those things, we all have to do that.
And living versus existing. I mean, that's a whole sermon right there. Preach
Yes.
on that. Just that's a whole nother word coming on living versus existing right there. And then we could spend more time talking about grief too another time. Including, I want to get into like what people can grieve, like what do we grieve? Because I even think there's a lot of us that are grieving our former lifestyles, living in the way that we are with COVID right now. There's a lot of things, even with children and things that they might be grieving and recognizing grief and talking about. So we could spend more time there. But given the hour, I want to pivot and talk about self-care, because self-care is essential. Again, what does your shirt say to get today, Chamia? First, love yourself. This is a line, the Fly Apparel line. There's a brother out at Ashby Flea Market in Berkeley here. I saw this, it had my name all over it, and it was an orange shirt, and I love orange. But anyway, that's where it all starts, with loving yourself, caring for yourself. So some things that I have been doing for self-care this week, and Dr. Walters, I want to hear from you what you've been doing for self-care this week. So I have been continuing with my gardening and buying more houseplants and getting into that. And it's interesting, folks that know me, it's like I have a beautiful garden, like I could do that, but I'll kill a houseplant in a minute. So like they don't go together, but I'm getting better and enjoying that in my space. So gardening, I've been putting on real clothes because I realized I've been indoors and at home working and all that for over a year now. And I've been living in t-shirts and leggings. I haven't put on real clothes, and then I'm like, oh, my stuff is fitting different. So this week I have been putting on real clothes. A couple of days this week, which feels great too, putting on clothes and doing my hair. I even put on makeup a couple of times to like not go nowhere, but that felt good. I have been treating myself. So I treated myself to this new juicer. I've been on the fence for like 8 months about, do I want a juicer? Or am I going to keep buying these cold pressed juices? So I splurged and bought myself this $120 juicer. All right. So that, and then of course, spreading Black love, because that comes back to me in love too. And so giving love is also feeding my soul and my spirit. So I'm all about that Black love. And those are some of the things I've been doing for self-care this past week. Dr. Walters, what about you? What does self-care look like in your neck of the woods?
So I actually adhere to the base model that I try to teach people. And so I always try to get some exercise in, whether it's walking first thing in the morning, middle of the day, end of the day. I try to get at least a minimum 30 minutes more, I try to do more, but at minimum 30 minutes. Sleep. I make time to take naps. I love a nap in between sessions with my patient. It, rejuvenates me. Eating, I've made a commitment to myself to eat healthier. And so I'm doing more fruits, veggies, is a shelter in place because, like you're saying, it's very easy to let ourselves go. And actually, I'm doing the same thing. One of the same things you mentioned, I found this week, I've actually been getting dressed, putting my hair up instead of just leaving it down, and putting on perfume, even though I'm not going anywhere, so I've made that commitment to myself to start doing more of that. I always, try to connect with folks. So I just continue to do that. I have, siblings, and we talk every day. My niece was making fun this morning. She's like, it's 11 o'clock and I haven't heard you and your brothers or sisters on the phone yet.
Right.
So reaching out to people, trying to keep that communication going, because, we have to learn how to enjoy life. We have to learn how to live, even with what's happening. Because when we talk about distress tolerance, right, one of the things we have to understand is that in order to survive, when things are outside of our control, the thing that's in our control is we change how we interact with a thing, whatever that thing is, right? If we don't, then we are going to fail, right? But recognize that it's a start. I can do this, and I'm going to change how I interact. And so that's been my choice over the last year, is I've chosen how I choose to allow COVID to, interrupt or not interrupt my life, so while still being safe. So that's been my self-care this week, is just really, getting up, doing things about making it all about me. It's all about me.
Right. All about me. I love that. It's my mantra for my workshop. So, which I also want to do a plug that Dr. Walters every year has this annual Black Women's Wellness Retreat. So it is currently still scheduled to take place this year. It's July 25th to August 2nd. So it's a week in Jamaica at a private villa. And so if you are interested in that and participating in a Black Women's Wellness Retreat, you can visit her website, which is there for you in the comments. And I will also post it again. And I will let y'all know, for those of you who may watch this later on YouTube or on Facebook, her website is www.drwaltersnight.com. And I will repost this in the comments real quick. Let us know, what are you doing for self-care, people, family? I want to know. Self-care is essential. So drop a line. Tell me what you're doing for self-care. You never know. You might give someone else an idea of things that they can do for themselves. Or, oh, I do like that. Let me do that this week. Things like that. So keep the self-care going, the self-love going. And we are going to pivot and get into #DearLove the movement, because we are here to talk about love. As a reminder, keep those love letters, questions, and topics coming in. You can email them into me, info@ChamiaLaRae.com. You can DM your love letter, question, or topic at Just Chamia anywhere on social media. I am not about putting people on blast. I'm about encouraging, empowering, and uplifting Black love. So if you include your name, I will not list your name or the names of anyone else that you may mention in your letter. I will either remove them altogether, or I will change the names so that it doesn't change the context. All right. So keep them coming, and let's talk about love. All right. So the first one today, the first question, in dating, what are acceptable age differences for women and men? What age differences are acceptable? All right, Dr. Walters, you want to start? What's your thought?
No, I'm not with the 10-foot pole.
We want to know, what does the good doctor say about this? Okay, I will, okay. So this is one of those things. For me, I admit that I have some biases. I definitely have some biases in place when it comes to dating and ages. And I think I feel differently depending on the age of the people involved in the relationship. So here's how I mean. Do I think it's acceptable for a 60-year-old man to date a 22-year-old? I don't. Do I think it's okay for a 60-year-old woman to date a 22-year-old? I do not. So for me, that's too big of a gap. I don't see that working. That being said, I think that if you're both older, so like me being 40 some odd years of age, dating someone that's in their 50s, you know, mid 50s or so maybe we have like a 10 or 15-year gap, I feel like it's less of an issue, because when I'm 60 and he's 75, or I'm 70 and he's 85, I feel like it's less of a difference. But if I'm 15 and he's 30, it's a big problem. So for me, my response is that I do have some biases in place, and it depends on the age of the people involved. It doesn't matter if the older person is a man or a woman, because I know some people do have that stigma where older men can date younger women, but older women can't date younger men. I'm not of that that thought, but I do think that it does just vary on the age of the parties, and certainly depending on how much younger that other person is. Like if they're, especially if they're in their teens or their 20s, I'm a lot more sensitive to anyone dating someone that's in their teens and their 20s, because in your teens and your 20s, your brain is still developing.
Yeah.
Your
So let
brain,
me, I'll chime in.
yeah, go ahead.
You know, so I think, you know, the reason I'm like, you know, again, because I think it does come down to individual choices, minus the pieces that have legal issues attached. So taking out the, you know, we know that there are rules around, you know, 2 years, you know, or also for kids who, if there's a developmental delay, that the age difference looks different, right? So if we remove those, you know, from the equation and talk about people who are of age, meaning 18 and above, legally and competent, right? Not developmentally delayed, then I think it does come down to individual choices, right? And I do agree. I think for some people, no more than a 2 year is okay for them, is that's their preference. I don't believe in, you know, well, a man can be 80 and marry a 21-year-old, but a woman can't. I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I think, you know, we have to be, again, you know, society dictates a lot. And we still, whether we like it or not, we still live in a patriarchal society. And so, yes, it's still frowned on. Why is a woman called a cougar, but a man is called, you know, I don't know what they're called, you know, whatever they're called, but it's okay, right? And so I do take offense to that I think if at 60 I choose to date someone who's 30 and that's my preference, I should not be labeled as a cougar. I think that's just my style, as long, again, we're looking at it from a legal, meaning in this time, not chronological age, but developmental, you know, maturity. And let's also be fair, we know that women mature faster than men. So, you know, when you're 25 as a woman and a man is 25, he's still 15. So, you know, so we want to keep it real. Oh, we also, there's peace, right? But seriously, though, I think it does come down to individual choice and what you're comfortable with. You know, if you're comfortable dating someone who's much older, 15, 20 years older, then that's on you. That's what makes you happy. It's about you, because at the end of the day, it's what makes me happy. And if I'm 20 and I'm dating someone who's 50 and he treats me well, he treats me right, he takes care of me, he respects my boundaries, then who is it for society or anyone else to say, here's your senior? That's not the point. The point is, it's how I'm respected, how I'm being treated, because I could date someone.
Respect is a huge thing when it comes to age. Yeah, especially if you have those bigger gaps. You know, if you're going to date someone that's older and they're constantly reminding you that you're just a kid, there's a lack of respect there. Or y'all generation don't. You know, if you're constantly putting down someone else's generation too, there's also a lack of respect there. So it is personal choice. Absolutely, period, right? Especially within the law, as you mentioned. But I acknowledge, since y'all asking me,
yes.
I have some
bias. I want to make sure we put that plug in.
I have some biases when it comes to this. And they don't all make sense, but that's just how I think. And so this is what it is.
That's it. That's you know, that's your show. We know that there's some state that has the Romeo Juliet law. So at 16, I can do whatever the hell I want. Right. So that's still there. And so it still, again, comes down to, you know, what my preference would be versus what yours would be versus what this other person would be within a healthy context. Right.
Yep. All right. Let's get into another one. Peace, sis. Peace to you. Peace, sis. I was introduced to a young lady by a friend. Our first few dates have been great and we talk for hours easily. I like her a lot, but we're not compatible in one or two key areas for me. I've expressed this to her with the expectation of keeping things platonic, but I'm concerned she's holding hope that we'll be together. Should I just cut her off altogether, which I would hate to do because we're becoming great friends? Signed, Just Being Honest.
So what's the name of the person who wrote this?
Just Being Honest. I changed the name.
Okay. All right, just being honest.
Okay.
You know, I think communication in any relationship is the key.
Mhm.
And by communication, I mean effective communication. So I think in this situation, I think, you know, having another conversation with this young lady to be able to say, okay, how do you see us? Right? Because you know, the thing about when we communicate, it's a map, right? And I
Mhm.
may think I'm saying something and it's coming across very clearly. One is going to be something totally different based on where you are in your process, right? Because it's going to pass through your filters and what your, you know, body language is and all of that. So one of the best thing might be in terms of effective communicating is to check in with her and to just be able to say, you know, something as simple as, okay, how do you see us and where do you see us? Where do you see us going? Right? And see what she reflects back to you. And at that point, it becomes a dialogue. You know, well, here are my concerns. And, you know, I don't know if you've already shared with her, you know, all of that, but some have to revisit that same conversation multiple times before the person hears it. And there's, you know, there's a certain set of skills that we can use. You know, if you want to preserve this relationship, there's a set of skills we call the, you know, the give skills, which means you want to be gentle in your approach, right? You want to make sure she knows that you are interested in what she has to say. So you need to validate her experience, right? And you want to use an easy manner, right? So you want to definitely, you know, eye contact as appropriate. You know, you want to be gentle when you have these conversations, because at the end of the conversation, as you mentioned, you do want to maintain a relationship with this person. So you want to act in a way that she hears you, she respects you. So even if the agreement was we're going to go our separate ways, it's not going to be with animosity. It's
Yeah.
going to be with, you know, it's hard for me to be friends with you because I like you so much. So I think it's healthier for us if we go our separate ways. So she may have to say that, right? But at the end of the day, she's still going to respect who you are because of who showed up in this conversation, right? So you want to be able to listen and validate her experience.
Yes, I agree with everything that Dr. Walter said, starting with communication and having a face-to-face conversation is best, or video chat if that's what y'all are doing. I don't know how y'all are talking and meeting and doing all that right now, but if you can see a person, I feel like those types of conversations are best face-to-face versus text or just on the phone. So that's one. So communication is another is key, and just, you know, having a level setting conversation in a respectful way that doesn't destroy a person or really damage or hurt their feelings. Although you might say something from where you are, that's not where they are, and that might hurt, but you get what I'm saying, not intentionally being hurtful. I also think that it's important that you look at your actions and how you guys are behaving, because if you're saying that you want a platonic relationship, but the way that you guys are kicking it and maybe some of the activities that you all are doing are more than friendly, then you might need to stop that so that there is no confusion. You don't want to be creating confusion and doing things and acting in a way that's more than what you're saying that you want. So I would ask that both of you check your behaviors, as well as having a conversation that level sets where you are. I don't think, as your question was, should I cut her off altogether? Which I would hate to do because we're becoming great friends. I don't think so. I mean, again, we talk about this all the time. We need all of our love. Black love is revolutionary, and this is what they don't want us to do. They don't want us having healthy male and female friendships, certainly not even healthy male and female relationships, or just healthy relationships, sisterhoods, brotherhood. They don't want us to do that. So I think that we do need that. No, you shouldn't throw this person away just because, you know, she wants to be with you and you don't want to be with her. Figure a way to communicate it, and then maybe establish some boundaries, some friendship boundaries in terms of how you'll act and things that you'll do together or not. But Yeah, talk it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. I want to get out into doing shout outs as we're just about time, but I did get another question just come in for Dr. Walters. Question for the show. The longer are you down for one more question, Dr.
That's fine.
Walters? And then what you okay.
Go right ahead.
I'm like, okay, Black folks. Now you know my show is from at 2:00. It is 3:30, but here y'all go. Okay.
That's
All
fine.
right, we gonna get it in. Dr. Walter said fine. So thank y'all for watching and coming in. Okay. The longer COVID-19 goes on, my friend seems more depressed. Before January 2021, she would discuss her feelings, whether happy, sad, or otherwise, take walks, and stay in touch with relatives and friends. In my last conversation with her, she says no one wants to keep hearing about her bipolar son who is not properly caring for himself. How can we, her friends, encourage her to continue caring for herself and let her know we care? Currently, from time to time, we drop off food and a little money to him from her or us. It's making us sad. We are mostly seniors. Hope questions make sense.
So you chipped out for a little bit, but I think I got what you're asking. I think the person is asking, how can they continue to support and show up for their friend? Okay. What you're doing right now, right? The thing to understand is that she herself is grieving. You know, Chamia mentioned this earlier, and I know we don't have time to go into that, is that grieving comes in various forms. It doesn't have to be a physical death. She's probably grieving, you know, her son going through his experience and that loss. You know, there's that feeling of helplessness that she's coming to terms with, which is, I cannot show for my son the way I would like to. She's probably also going through that whole, you know, questioning herself. Am I a good enough mom? You know, what did I do? You know, is this my fault? Right? Which, you know, is going to play through her head. Right? So there's a lot that's probably unsaid on her part that she herself is processing. Right? Unfortunately, that's going to have to be her journey, right, to go through that. And maybe one of the things you guys can encourage her to do is talk to someone, right? That's, you know, a therapist, basically, is what I'm saying, right? Because it's true, you know, as much as we want to be supportive, it does become taxing. And we talk about vicarious trauma, you know, consistently hearing another person's, if you're not trained for that. And for even those of us who are trained for it, you know, after a while, if you don't know how to take care of yourself, it can take a toll on your physical body. Right. And so I think one of the things you guys can do, along with what you're continuing to do, is encourage her to find someone. It may mean you guys may even have to help her find someone, you know, if she's not motivated or she doesn't have, you know, when we talk about depression, that's one of the symptoms, is the energy goes down. So part of what you guys as a collective can maybe do is, if you know if she has insurance or whatever, is to maybe start the legwork for her, knowing that, you know, you can start the legwork, but she's gonna have to finish the journey, because most clinicians, I know I won't schedule an appointment, you know, for someone unless I have them on the line and get their commitment, right? Because a part of that is, you know, for the work to be done, you have to show that you're committed. But it doesn't mean that Chamia can't do the legwork, find me, and then put her on the phone. Right, so that's one way you can show, you know, you can help her. The other way, you know, that I've, you know, encouraged people to do is find, like, if there's like a group or a class, take it with her. You know, so if there's a like managing life challenges, or there's a, I know, like, for example, Kaiser has support group for family who are dealing with a family member who has an SMI, right? And so that's specifically just for the family members and friends. So go with her, you know, so that she's not feeling so isolated and alone. You know, so there's different ways we can show up so that you're also preserving your energy. Right? Because what she's doing is she's trying to be the quote unquote strong Black woman that we talked about. And like, I'm not going to keep dumping on myself, but, you know, we're not an island. No, in Jamaica, there's a saying that says, no man is an island, right? And the motto is out of many one people, which is how you open this session today, Chamia, right? Is out of many one people. We all need someone.
Yeah.
Right? We all need that. So it doesn't matter who we are, what we think we are, or who we think we are, right? We live by connection, right? That's how we survive. So show up for her, being there. And sometimes just say, sometimes just sit in, don't even talking. Just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to come sit with you today.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to talk. Sometimes that's all the person is to know you're sitting there, right? As a physical presence. Put on whatever show she likes. Don't talk about it. Just put it on. Even if you don't like it, you don't have to like the show, but she likes it. And you put it on and you sit there and you watch it without comments, without anything. Give her that space to then say what she needs, right? So sometimes just being there, right?
Yeah,
I'll
add one more too, because I know that that this person put into that they're seniors, and so I'll add two is to remind them the things that she does that bring value to your life.
Yes.
Because I know
Yes,
sometimes
absolutely.
when they get older, they could feel discarded or this or that, and this is this person's son, and he has all the needs, but she has needs and she has value that she's bringing to your life, and maybe reminding her of those ways, whether it's present things or even things in the past that they've done to bring value to your life.
Absolutely. Thanks for putting that, because we want to operate from a strength-based model. This culture, this society operates more from a deficit. I like the strength-based model, which is helping people understand, what are you bringing to the table? How did you get to where you are?
Yeah.
Given, if we want to keep it in the, the Black, discussion, how did you survive 60 years? You must have some resiliency. Let's feed on that, right? Show her value and yeah, let her know that I appreciate you for who you are, and you've been there for me and I'm here for you now. So just so you know, whether you like it or not, I'm gonna be here.
Right.
You get to choose how much you want me to support you, but I'm gonna be here. Yes.
Bow. Yes. All right. So with that, because we are over time, we're going to close the show out with some shout outs for good-ish, because, I'm about that. And it's another way to spread love is by recognizing people who do great things. I am going to post a link in the chat for those of you on Facebook. Others of y'all can find it and read it later. But I want to give a shout out to Oscar Edwards. Oscar Edwards, this brother here, he is the owner of Complex Nightclub in Oakland. If y'all are from the town or have been in the Bay, you have probably partied on that block a lot. It's where Jeffries is. You have Oakland Inc. owned by Daryl on there. You got Joyce Gordon Gallery in that block. It's a powerful block between Broadway and Franklin, I think, in Oakland on 14th. So Oscar Edwards, this brother, owner of Complex, opened a new grocery market, Black owned, one of only 2 Black owned markets in Oakland. It's right next door to Complex on 14th. This area is a huge food desert. There's lots of new residences open there. There've been a lot of Black folks traditionally in that area in downtown Oakland as well. So he has opened up this new grocery store there on 14th downtown. So Oscar, big ups to you. I'm so proud of you. This is amazing. I also want to give a shout out to brother JR, the big homie there, the People's Minister of Information. If y'all remember, brother JR, who did this wonderful interview, and the link that I sent to you for blacknewworldmedia.com, which is where you can find this story. But shout out to brother JR for the interview. Shout out to Oscar Edwards for opening this new grocery store in the midst of COVID too. Brother, you did that. Dr. Walters, any shout outs for people doing good-ish that you want to recognize?
Chamia for the Chamia show. I think this is great. So thank you for creating the space, that's relaxed, and, I've done other shows. And so this is nice to just, be chill, no pressure, create the space. Denzel Herrera, he's doing a wonderful once a month thing for Black men. He's a friend of mine. And so, the last Thursday, third Thursday of every month, he creates a space for men to be vulnerable, to just speak their truth, tell their stories, unscripted. So it's unscripted. So I think that's a wonderful space to be in. Black Female Project, who's doing their thing. Just they're doing all this work around, hearing the voices of Black women, telling their stories. So I want to give a shout out to Precious Stroud, who's doing that.
Hey, Precious, me and you gotta connect, girl. I've been hearing too much. Somebody else was talking to me about you yesterday.
Oh yeah, she's a really great, person. I definitely love the work she does. And to all the the Black folks out there who are doing things that I know or don't know, Pierce Community group in Oakland, Dr. Stephanie Norford, they're doing great work. So all the Black folks who are out there trying to survive and to help us all survive through all of this, right? Thank you guys for doing the work, and for continuing the journey of healing in any way, shape, or form, whether it's through your art, through shows, through music, the uplifting things that we all need, creating these online classes. I think it's fantastic. So shout out to all, each and every one of you. Appreciate you all. Appreciate you, Ms. Chamia, for having me on. Thank you for that. And for all the audience, appreciate you. It's a Sunday afternoon, and I know most people hold their Sundays precious. I know I do. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to even be here, and, for me to be able to answer, some of your questions as much as we could within an hour and a half. So.
Yes. Well, thank you, Dr. Walters. And this will be my last shout out for the day, which is to you and all the truth tellers. We talk a lot on the show about the war on Blackness and the war on truth. And so shout out to those people who are giving us real information so we can make informed decisions and live healthy lives and being our best selves. Dr. Walters is one of those straight shooters, no chasers, all about the truth and the facts for us and uplifting our Black community. So thank you, Dr. Walters, for coming. Thank you for answering questions. Of course, there's a ton more. We would love to have you on at another time and talk again. Again, all of you, please do connect with her on Facebook and Instagram. I've placed the links in the chat here a couple times. We have comment here. Thank you both. This show needs a repeat. So, hey, people have spoken. Yes, we will try to do that again. You can also.
Can I just say this real quick though?
Yeah.
I am not a social media person. So you might want to reach out to me via my Gmail.
Okay, what's your Gmail? And I'll put it in the chat. What's the Gmail?
I'll say that, or phone by phone or Gmail. That much, that's easier for me to respond to. I'm afraid I'm going to hit the wrong button on Instagram and report somebody.
We just talked about telling
just so you know.
Real. And here she goes. She's letting y'all know I'm not about this social media life.
Call
me, email me.
Email me. That I know how to do, but I really truly appreciate all of this and your feedback. Did you see the resources I put in the chat?
I put in the chat. Yes, I got them here and I pasted them into Facebook. Yes. For those of you who are on Facebook or who watch it later via my Facebook page or on YouTube, it's in the comments there. There's coping strategies and then also Mental Health Coalition, Black mental health resources there.
Yes, okay, good. I wasn't sure if it came through. So yes, and
and then if you get the if you have links for that Black men's vulnerability group, or anything, like you could get them to me after the fact and then I'll post and share that, or even this work. I'm happy to share, our people doing great things.
Yes, absolutely. So,
thank you again, Dr. Walters. Thank you to all of you who have watched, continue to watch, plan to watch the Just Chamia show. I appreciate y'all. We will be back same time, 2 to 3:30 here again. Please keep your questions coming in. Any topics that you think we need to talk about are relevant to our Black community, DM me anywhere at Just Chamia, email me info@Chamia LaRae. Same with hashtag Dear Love the Movement. Please keep your love letters, questions, and topics coming in because we need to support and strengthen and have more Black love.
Yes, it would be nice to have a whole session on just relationship communication and healthy relationships.
Well, let's collab, sis. Let's put that together. We can do that. Yes, I'm for that. So making and baking now on the show. All right. So until next time, y'all, stay Black, stay beautiful, stay blessed, and be a blessing. Take care now.
Bye-bye.